Welcome back to the Camel Connection podcast. We have an inspiring and very informative interview for you today with the amazing Christina Adams, who is still on a quest for miracles in the world of camels. Yes, camels. Miracles, camels. Our favorite subject, obviously, is camels. So we obviously could not resist inviting Christina to join us on this podcast to share with us, especially particularly now her new book, Camel Crazy, has just come out. Now, when we heard of the title and saw the title, Camel Crazy, we knew that the language of, in air quotes, camel people was being spoken. So we had to, of course, ask her here to share her stories. So Christina Adams is an American award-winning writer, journalist, author, and speaker. She and her work have been featured extensively by National Public Radio, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, LA Times Magazine, Gulf News, Dubai One, Autism File, just to name a few. Her new book, Camel Crazy, A Quest for Miracles in the Mysterious World of Camels, explores the scientific and cultural importance of camels and their milk. Yes, camel milk. Her first book, A Real Boy, reveals the world of autism and her son's early intervention. She's an expert on autism and camel milk. She advises family and scientists all over the globe. In Christina's new book, Camel Crazy, it chronicles how, as a mother, she found herself traveling the globe from Bedouin camps in the Middle East to Amish farms in Pennsylvania to camel-herder villages in India to obtain camel milk, which dramatically helps her son's autism symptoms. So during our chat here with her, it was clear to us that her mission was fueled by love and determination to create awareness about how amazing camels are and, of course, the health benefits that they can offer us, humans, of course, us as humans. Being serial camel lovers ourselves and having a son on the autism spectrum, we felt so familiar with some of the stories that Christina shares with us in this incredibly informative interview. So any person that's camel crazy, we know you're out there, you will not want to miss this insightful and inspiring interview. So let's roll it.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I've enjoyed watching your progression of you as you really moved forward with your activities.
Thank you. And us with you. This is great.
I'm glad to be here.
So I'll start off by welcoming you to the Camel Connection podcast, and thank you so much for spending the time on being here. Yeah, there's lots of people that know your work and maybe have read your first book or maybe know of your up and coming book. So, so if you'd like to start off by telling us who you are and what you do with camels per se, and why you do it.
Okay, well, Christina Adams is my name. I guess if you have to label me, I'm a writer. I do a lot of other things as well, but mainly that's my core competency. But I don't own camels. I wish I did, but I live near the beach, not a city. And owning camels, as we all know, is a big investment of time, money, and aggravation and love. So I got into the camel world really through the door of autism and parenting. I had a career before as a writer. I worked at the Pentagon and aerospace. I worked in some government, worked in a lot of systems like that. And then I got my master's degree in creative writing. And then I had written a novel. Chances are good I could have gotten something published out of that, but then my son was diagnosed with autism right before he was 3. So I just pivoted and I went into that whole world of autism, medical health, which then unraveled the nutrition piece, which is important in autism. Not for every child, but a great deal of children and adults are affected by what they eat.
Yes.
I learned about the immune system connection to autism, and then with all the intervention that I did for my son, I wrote my first book, which was about that, my first published book. And that was called A Real Boy, a true story of autism, early intervention and recovery.
Yes, and I haven't read that book, and but I'd like to get both of your books at the same time, because you've got a new one coming out. Tell us a little bit about the new book coming out.
Well, it's funny. The Real Boy was all about early intervention, all the stuff you do, all the diets, all the medicine, but it really was a personal story, because I hadn't seen that story that would really tell behind the scenes, the parents' anguish, what you have to do, how it really is. And so I wanted to write a real personal story. So it was just a few months after that book came out, which before then Camel, I didn't know camel from anything. I happened to be at a children's book fair in California, and I met a guy with a camel, because there was a camel standing there. And so I asked him some nosy questions, and it gave me a big idea. And that's what plunged me into the world of camels. And that's been quite a while. So ever since then, I just really started studying the milk and the camel cultures, and the amazing camels and the people just captured my interest, because, as we all know, really compelling. So that's why I thought it's time to bring this message to the world now with the book Camel Crazy, A Quest for Miracles in the Mysterious World of Camels.
So what was your nosy question? What did you ask this camel person?
Okay, so is this a good time for me to read a little bit from the first chapter that tells how it went down?
Absolutely.
All right. So this is what my book looks like. Hello, there's a camera.
Gorgeous. And for those that are listening, it really is a beautiful cover. And honestly, I think I've seen another proof of it. I don't know.
I've seen it on Facebook a little bit.
But that cover is just a beautiful photo. Do you know where that was taken?
I sure do.
Yeah.
I was there that day, and it was taken at Oasis Camel Dairy in Ramona, California. Yeah. But the camel looks like it could be in a lot of different camel countries, doesn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
It sure does.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. And then there's the back. So it tells, a little bit of synopsis and blurbs, and a little picture of me looking a little more upscale than perhaps I do sitting at home. But anyway, we all have our good moments and our bad moments.
Yeah.
So I will go ahead and read a little bit. And this is really exciting for me, because I really haven't shared this with a lot of people yet.
No.
So this is a world first?
I think it might be. Okay, so this is, Chapter 1, Meeting the Camel. The camel stands calmly, munching something hay-like, placid in her dirty blonde summer coat. Her great head grows like a question mark from the curve of her muscular neck. Padded, leathery feet keep her comfortable on the bare spots of the lawn. She ignores the children offering pink tufts of cotton candy, staring at her with freckles ringing the O's of their open mouths. She was trundled in a horse van to this college in Orange County, California, 2 hours and a rocky mountain from her home in fire-scorched farm country. Her eyes watch the humans scattering on the green grass at this Sunday afternoon book festival. Her long lashes hide the clear inner eyelid that will automatically close if an unlikely coastal sandstorm roars in. This camel knows her mission. She tolerates the admiring glances and rude remarks like, "What's a camel doing here?" She knows that her human owner, the alpha bull of her herd, is nearby if she needs him. Little can faze her, as she has few natural predators and thus no startle reflex, although fluttering fabric may annoy her. Her eyes express a confident view of her place in the world, composed at this moment of a task, the pen that holds her, and something to nibble, with a little water on the side. Today, her job is to be a camel at the fair. What she doesn't know is that her blood can work medical miracles. Her flesh is kin to that of million-dollar racing camels. Her organs are debated, and her milk has healed the sick for centuries. She doesn't know that she's about to launch a movement that will drive her species' price sky high, that people will clamor for the milk she gives, which will help fuel a modern resurgence of her kind. Neither do I. At this moment, she's just a camel, and I'm just a fearful, newly separated single mother. She will inspire me to seek the surprising remedy for my son's autism symptoms and to become a camel milk expert. This creature will throw me into research, dispatch me across the United States, India, and the United Arab Emirates. and send my words to places like Malaysia, Sweden, England, Cyprus, Mongolia, France, and Pakistan. She'll cause scoffing and admiration, inspire scientific research in many products.
Wow.
From there.
Wow, that's powerful.
I just want to curl up on a couch and read the rest of it.
I nearly cried. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Wow.
So
that's quite special to me. I don't read that before yet. Out loud.
That is very special, and
yeah.
I can tell just by the start of the book that your writing style is very creative and really gets into the details of like I read a lot of books. I'm a bit of a book nerd, so I love those books that can really put you in the place of where somebody is, you know, in that moment. And you know, Russell felt a bit of emotion then. So your work is happening, which is great.
That is so powerful. It
actually is very close to our story. In the sense, like, who knows where a camel's going to take you?
I think that's a really good metaphor for the world of camels. Who knows where a camel's going to take you? That's really smart. I mean, who knew? Who knew a thing? I lived on a farm when I was a teenager and all that, but I hadn't worked a crop since college, and the only animal I ever really wanted was a horse. So camel is where it's at, though. So thank you for letting me do that and enjoying that. So I guess, you know, that's what happened after that. I had the idea that the milk would help my son. It just was based on all that, you know, intuition meets the research that I'd done prior.
Okay.
And so just came together, boom.
All right. So you obviously like you had the interest as well, but then you obviously went into the research side of things and been in contact with the research laboratories and scientists.
Ever since then, I have. So after that, you know, there was no information about it at the time, but I just determined I've got to find out about this. And there was nothing online. There was no one wrote me back. There was zero. So I just kind of talked to people, and I found someone in another country. And then he gave me to someone who actually was a scientist and remains my friend. And so we just started Skyping from Israel to my house. And he, as a scientist, knew about the milk, and I knew about autism. So together we kind of put together some ideas and theories, and I got that milk in to Los Angeles airport. It was some frozen raw milk from the Bedouins in the desert. And eventually I gave it to my son, and the results were just unbelievable. So ever since then, it's, you know, science and camel exploration for me.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I just want to go back to the start of your story. So when you wrote your first book, what's the name of your first book again?
My first book is called A Real Boy, A True Story of Autism, Early Intervention and Recovery.
Okay, so at that point of writing that, you didn't know about camel milk and its potential effects on autism, children with autism?
No, I didn't, and no one did. What I will say is that book did teach me about the importance of diet and the fact that other milks can induce or exacerbate autism symptoms in many of our children. Yes. Cow milk, especially goat milk, isn't a great substitute for them. Some are okay, but a lot of them are not. So that's what taught me, you know, to look heavily at nutrition, because that had a huge effect. So camel milk ended up being a modulator for him in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me what when that book A Real Boy was published.
That book, A Real Boy, was published in 2005 when he was 7 years old. And
okay.
Yeah.
So that was very much before all the camel stuff started happening, with like the more information, more camel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereabouts, in what country or regions is most of the research on autism and the benefits camel milk gives?
Well, that's a really good question. That's part of the uphill battle I've been fighting for many years. In this country, in America, camels are not even known as anything other than a tourist object or maybe a zoo creature. So there is about zero research that has gone on here. Most of the research comes out of so-called camel countries, which is our Middle Eastern countries, Sometimes in parts of Europe, they produce some. China's producing some. Turkey, I think, Iran, countries like that are not here. So it's been a little bit of a struggle, but I have worked with some scientists here myself, and I actually have a chapter on our results in this book, Camel Crazy.
Fantastic. Oh my God, I can't wait to read it.
Have you found that there's been any resistance towards any of the research?
She's smiling. I think that's a yes.
Hey, the word resistance has been, ever since autism hit my reality, it's been nothing but resistance. But I'll tell you what, that teaches you, you don't let things get in your way, or you will get zero. You will get nowhere. So that gave me a pretty thick skin. And after camel milk came into my life as my idea at the time, with nothing to back it up, then people are like, some people are like, it sounds great, amazing, really interesting. And other people are like, whatever are you talking about? Like, oh boy. So, but it's because I've been doing it so long, I have seen the progression come from camels, chamomile. Everybody thinks I'm saying chamomile tea, or camels, what? And then now it's like, oh yeah, camel milk. Oh, camel milk. I mean, most people still haven't heard of it, but at least the resistance has changed. Because now people are more aware of health and food and diet. And so it's better than it was. And the fact that this book is published, believe me, is a lot of progress.
Right.
And I just want to take that moment just to commend you and thank you for putting out work like that, because I mean, we all know camel books in general are few and far between. You can almost count them on one hand. But this stuff can change lives. Like, your first book, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to order them both at the same time. That, no doubt, you got some incredible feedback from parents that had just go, thank God somebody wrote my story as well. I'm sure a lot of parents could relate to your part of that story. I know I can. Just what you said here, just that the anguish of going through, we've got a son, which we spoke just before recording here, on the spectrum. He's 9 years old now. But just getting that news, and you're just like, well, first you're relieved. You're like, oh, thank God. Like now I can find the right support. But then it's just a whirlwind. And, but the book that Camel Crazy, is that what it's called? Camel
Crazy.
Camel Crazy.
And, and this,
I think
the subtitle kind of says it too. Quest for miracles. So that's what we need, right?
Yes, exactly. We do. And you can also find that with just dealing with camels in general. I mean, they've got all these amazing health benefits that they can offer us as humans, but also they can offer incredible healing, emotional healing, and just growth from the inside, as handlers as well. So this is great. Thank you so much for doing that for the camel industry, for the camel in general. I mean, if camels could talk, they'll go, thank God somebody wrote about us.
Well, also for the parents with children with autism, because there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of misinformation as well. And, at least here, well, I think anyway, with what you've done, there's a direction that's holistic, it's natural, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve the corporations, the big pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing, which I don't know what your opinion of them are, but mine is not exactly the highest. Sort of if they can't make money from it, then they're resistant. That's why I was asking about the resistance beforehand.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because this is a narrative about this journey, but I've got factual information woven into it. So you get to take the journey, but you get the information in a palatable way. So I've got a whole chapter that's devoted to the science on why camel milk works. And again, we can call it, if you formally have to call it like a hypothesis, but we know now that it works because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of people drinking it. So I have all the science laid out. The book is heavily footnoted. It's been edited by a science editor and then another science editor. Wow. And so it's really been looked at pretty tightly. So people they can pick up this book. I don't care how skeptical you are. If you pick up this book and you read this book, you're going to find yourself saying, well, even the hardest head person is going to have to say, well, there's something to this. And I know there's plenty to it. But I just wanted to hit everything all at once with this book.
Well, the beauty I think is that you've got your anecdotal, but also the science. And science is based on numbers and data. And numbers and data don't lie. They can't lie, and especially if it's from a lot of sources, then you reduce the chance of mishaps of data misinformation or misinterpretation, and that's what I think is really important with such a book as yours. Is you've got both. You've got the anecdotal, as you say, thousands of people, and the science. Beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It's been a lot of work, and the publishers really backed it very well with a lot of work on their part too. So it's a story, but it's going to tell the science, and it's got the footnotes. People can look it up if they want. But if somebody reads chapter 15, then you can hand chapter 15, buy the book, circle chapter 15 for your doctor and give it to them and say, if you don't read anything else, just read chapter 15 for me. And they probably won't, but if they do, then it's there for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, those that are definitely wanting some sort of guidance and direction and answers, those people will, be open to reading such a thing. Yeah.
Well, I will state it is endorsed by MDs and PhDs. And we have a geneticist, we have an MD neurologist, we have cancer researcher, we have all kinds of scientific people that are actually endorsing this book. So they wouldn't do that if they didn't see what was going on. So, and I've had a lot of the camel world people endorse it as well. And they've also helped put together and clarify some of the information, mostly about the animal part of it. But it's a real group endeavor. And I do appreciate you guys saying that because it has been a lot of work and it took a lot of people to make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. I should imagine you'd be quite heavily requested on the public speaking circuit nowadays. Or coming up towards it, I should imagine.
Well, let's hope so. If you know anybody that wants to learn about these wonderful animals that we care about, then please throw them my way, and I would love to share it with them.
I mean, it's no small news that the camel world is quite small, really. When you look at the world as a whole, especially in places like Australia and United States, where camel culture isn't a real thing. It is in history, but not really a real thing.
Right.
So this type of book is so much needed, and I'm so grateful that you wrote it. I want to go back to when you met your first camel, when you met this blonde camel at the
Oasis.
expo that you went to. So from that time you met that camel, because you wrote your first book in 2005. And then you met this camel in when was that?
2005, just a few months after the film came out. So this is sort of a sequel. You're going to find out what happened to me and my son too by reading this book. For readers of the first book. So, but you don't need to read the first book, but for those that did.
So 2005, you met this camel and started asking questions, and then and I can hear and see just from what you've said that this has taken a lot of work and a lot of community effort to get the right statistics, to get the right information about the camel, and also the things the camel can offer. So it's taken since 2005 until 2019. Your book launches in November or October?
October 29th, 2019.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
And so tell us a little bit about some of your most memorable moments in between 2005 and 2019 in your life with your son. Like, obviously you started trying him on camel milk, and then anything else you can remember along the way.
Yeah, well, there have been so many memorable moments due to this camel milk journey that it's pretty amazing. And I did put a lot of them in the book. Couldn't put all of them, of course, but quite a few. So, of course, the thing that started it off was how unbelievably he responded to the milk overnight. It was different the next day.
Tell us what you saw.
Yeah. So we saw 4 ounces at bedtime. That was working with my mentor friend, Dr. Amnon Gonen, who's in this book too. We decided that that would be the dose. Now you can't say dose when it's a food, you call it serving, but you know, if you're looking at it that way, we could say that was the amount that he should try. I mean, no one knew. Now, to give credit where it's wonderfully due, after I had my idea, I did a few months later find that there was an article by Dr. Reuven Yagil and Dr. Chavo, and they had written an article about a small trial of, well, it's not really a trial, but about some children in Israel getting better from camel milk than they had autism and food allergies. So that just confirmed the idea that I'd had. So, but it was just a small article. So basically Amnon and I were kind of flying blind. We were basing what we were going to do on how much the adult Crohn's users in Israel, because the adult men in Israel with Crohn's and IBD were using camel milk, and they were taking like more. But so he said, well, it's a child, so let's do a smaller amount. So we did the 4 ounces. So the next day it was unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. So he came down the stairs better. He cut his food without slipping and slopping it all over, because in autism, motor skills are involved throughout the whole body usually. And so what they call fine motor skills, you know, with the ability to cut and execute and handwrite, are usually weak in children with autism. So he cut his food better. He wasn't slipping around. He wasn't doing goofy kind of stimulating things like rolling his head around or repeating things or being giggly. He actually said things like, gosh, you are so good to me. I love you. You guys are so great. I just appreciate everything that you do. Like, you do so much for me. You give me my medicine. I really love you guys. And things like that, looking at us. And it's just that whole different thing. And then he got down from the table. He got his own shoes on. He picked up his own backpack. And he said, so who's picking me up from school today? And see, those things fall under the loose rubric of what's called executive functioning and motor planning, because a lot of children with autism have difficulties, and adults too, with kind of carrying out tasks one after the other in an efficient order and thinking about what they're going to do to carry out that task. So that was very different. And then as that day was shocking, like the difference was so shocking. So then when he came home, it just kept following through. Within a few days, he started being able to cross the street without me hanging on to him. You will often see a parent with a child with autism kind of hanging on to them, holding their hand on the collar to keep them safe in public. Yeah. And I didn't always have to do that with him. He started getting worse. He started having these behavioral breakdowns and just kind of decompensating. And so he'd gotten worse. So I had to have the hand on the collar. So all of a sudden I noticed he's like looking both ways. He's like, let go, you know, and then he just watched it walk, and we crossed over, and he's fine, and he's doing all this stuff. I'm like, wow. And so he could behave in the car better. He wasn't, you know, kicking the seat and doing stuff like that. And then as the weeks went on, then suddenly I could see the systemic effects from inside working. I would have thought he was controlled for inflammation. I did think he was, but he was not, obviously. So he has these little white bumps on his skin and on the back of his arms, which is fairly common, like these skin issues in children with autism. So they started clearing up, just like incredibly. And then the behavior breakdown stopped immediately. The only thing that had helped a little bit before was like protein or food, some kind of food. I would just jam food in his mouth when he started to decompensate and get all goofy and be out of control. But it just didn't help enough. So the camel milk, boom, stopped it all. And then after that, a lot of children, when they ingest something that that doesn't work well with them, like in my son's case, it was sugars and dairies, carbohydrates, and dairy products. Those things would make him actually get like a drunk frat boy, I call it, or make him, if he got regular cow milk and cheese, he would actually start hand flapping and toe walking, which he normally did not do. And it would make him act autistic. And so, and even one time he got some and he said, Mom, it feels like there's dirt in my brain. And so when he would get a dietary infraction and start acting out and stuff, I would give him camel milk. 15 minutes later, boom, he's back to normal. And he's even apologizing for his behavior and saying he didn't know why he acted like that.
That's amazing. I can relate to so much of this. Yeah. We went through an entire dietary cleanse when he was our son Tate was officially diagnosed. Well, not officially here in Australia. That it was yeah, he was on
recognised
he's on the spectrum, because they don't diagnose until they're a little bit older. Well, in this case, it wasn't where they weren't going to diagnose him until he was a little bit older. And those exact things, he would have something like dairy, and cow dairy, wheat, sugar, just, yeah, like I went food nuts.
Chocolate, bean,
yeah,
colors, dyes.
I'm just like, we're going to clean this up. Because I'd known a lot about food before that anyway, but just the smallest little amounts, like you say, it just changes their whole behaviour. And I mean, it happens to us too when we eat sugar. We just don't notice it as much as adults. So yeah, incredibly sensitive to those things as well. We didn't have the chance to have access to camel milk at that time, although all this stuff was starting to come to the surface, you know. I think due to your good work, a lot of that, you know, more of that awareness of what are the things that camel milk can do or cannot do, and all this sort of stuff. So all that awareness was coming to the surface, and yeah, so we can relate to a lot of this. I'm sure a lot of parents can too.
Christina, look, I'm blown away, but just for the argument's sake, I'm actually hearing the skeptics out there. Now, in your journey, when you started giving your son camel milk, now, was there any other factors that were different in the day-to-day living that could have also have made an effect from that moment that you noticed those differences?
I just love that you asked this, because here we go. So you're talking to somebody that had already learned the scientific method, which is only change one variable at a time and control the other variable. Okay. So my son had already been documented, reams of data behind him on a daily basis from the world's most preeminent autism doctor, Dr. Dorian Grant-Pichet at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. That's who was my ABA team therapist. I had my occupational therapist. I had my doctor, the autism doctors, plural, that would track his blood work on a regular basis. This kid has records like you can't believe. Yeah. And so all of that had been totally tracked. I could see when he ate and what it would do to his blood work. Yeah. I could see what it would do to his brain span. When you do a neurospec scan, you can see what the brain activity is and change the diet or give a little medication. So this child had already had a lot of data, and I had the data, and I knew how to institute such things. So one of the reasons that I didn't give him the milk as soon as it was in my hot little hands is because I wanted data, and I wanted to give it in the most scientific method possible. However, at that time, I was a new, but at that time I was a newly single mother, and he was no longer in ABA, so I didn't have those regular therapists. So I was trying to get regular therapy to come back again to take data. Now he was in a school, so the school could take that data, because at schools they do check marks, worksheets, and I didn't tell him. So you have to do that blinding effect so that you don't prejudice people. Yes. So this child had it given the right way, and we continued to track him. I doubled the dose. We saw what would happen. We backed back down, and then always I was able to track what was going on with him, and he had all these doctors doing all this blood work. So yeah, and then I wrote the first article a few years later when I found out I could get camel milk in America, so I wouldn't jeopardize his supply. Mm-hmm. And that article was very, backed up with all the documentation. And then in 2013, I wrote a medical journal article. It's peer reviewed, and that means doctors looked at it. Doctors helped me, shape it and make sure I had what I was supposed to have. And that's called a case report. But I'm not a doctor, so that means it's called a patient report. But nonetheless, it was done with medical doctors. And so that I drew on all the data from all those years and everything I did. And so that article's now been cited maybe a dozen times in the literature by researchers. So have that I got the data for you. So for my son.
So, I know that, like there's quite a number of people like on a Facebook page at Camel Milk or something like that. I can't exactly remember the name. So you collected all that data on your son. Are there other kids who have a similar database of anecdotal records of what they've had, and then camel milk as well, to back up the claims of what you've got in your book about the I call it a miracle that camel milk can offer.
Well, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of children that get behavioral services now. I mean, worldwide. So it's a huge number. I mean, in the United States, the diagnosis rate, the official rate is 1 out of 58. But if you go down and analyze the data, it's more like 1 out of every 36 US children. So that growth has been exponential, and it's global. So if you take the children that are getting services through the behavioral providers and the speech therapists and things like that, there are data points. I mean, when you get a special needs kid, it's all about people observing them, tracking them, know, their progress, their goals. And so, now the one drawback that I do say to parents is because they get very eager, to try everything in the world. So I always say, change one thing at a time. Don't change anything else. Don't start new therapies. Don't start new medications. Don't start new anything. And you only don't change any other diet. Don't do supplements. Don't put powder in the milk or,
flavors.
What's that everybody puts probiotics, things like that. No. You only change that one thing. And so that's what you can call an N of one. It's sort of a one-person little scientific controlled experiment. So, people do it differently, and not everybody's going to do it perfect like that. But there are enough people now that have enough kids with eyes on them that can see that there's a difference in it.
Okay. Now, also, do you know much about, or whether or not, because one of the merging products that's coming out of the camel industry is powdered camel milk, and whether or not that has the same effect on autistic kids or not?
Well, here's a two-pronged approach, the way I look at it. For my very first idea, standing in front of that camel on the cover of this book, I think it's the same one, I'll have to double check, but from the very first camel meeting that I had, my ideas were, number one, it might help my son's autism and those kind of things. Number two, it might be an excellent dairy substitute for people like him that cannot tolerate regular dairy, which is way more than autism. And it's a lot of other, if you're talking other conditions, it's food allergies, eczema, it's, gastrointestinal issues. There's no shortage of people that can't have regular dairy. So that said, now that the camel milk industry has grown and gone forward, we do have the powdered milk. So every child being different, it's obvious that some children are doing fine on the powdered milk and that's all they need. And then other children, they seem to have to go to that level of, they have to have, raw, whatever form of, least processed milk they can have. But there are a lot of benefits that are coming from all forms of the milk. So the powdered milk is something that is you can start, like a lot of people are like, do I want to start with raw? Do I want to start with pasteurized? Do I want to start with powder? So if you want to, if you're that kind of person, start with the pasteurized or start with the powder, see how that works for you. Then if you need to, you can get the raw milk. You can even pasteurize it yourself at home quickly if you'd rather. If you're unsure of your source, in some countries, I say, you have to be careful. In America, we're lucky we have excellent raw milk, no problems. But we don't have MERS, we don't have things like that. But even some people are like, MERS isn't really a factor in camel milk. That's still up for debate, but it's nothing too much that I worry about that way. There's other things you have to worry about when it comes to camel milk in countries where they don't have great processing or cold chain storage. But the powder, some people are doing quite well on it. Other people are doing fine on pasteurized liquid, and some people feel like they get the most from the raw. So the other thing is, when you're traveling, this is what I like to do. You take the powdered milk with you. It's easy to travel with when you're going to grandma's house, or you're going to take your smoothies, you're going to the side of the world, or you're going to, next door, and you want to have your own powdered camel milk, because honestly, it's the only milk we have in the house anymore. So I have flown with it. But, so it's all got various forms. How much does, the heat lose, or now there's freeze dried? It doesn't really even, everybody's got different studies on it. Some of them are private, some of them are out there. So basically, really, I just say, see what works for your kid. If you want to start with the, powder or the pasteurized dew, go to raw if you need to. That's what I say. And then use it always for your substitute. So don't underestimate that it's a great source of bone health, that's a great source of muscular health, because children that don't have animal milks, they don't get the same benefit for their bone structure. Now, I know that it's not a popular message among the vegan type world, and I'm not against, plant-based diets at all. I do a lot of that myself, but sometimes there's no substitute for the animal milk.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. So I'd love to hear, so the first time that your son had the camel milk, and then, so tell us again what age he was when you first started giving camel milk.
Well, he was 7 when I had the idea, I guess he was almost 7. And then when I actually gave it to him, he had just turned 9. So it took me that long to get my hands on it, fly it in and set it up. So I got desperate enough to just give it to him without my therapist at hand. And now he is 21.
So tell us what's happened between that time. Like, is he still taking camel milk to this day? And what happened between when he was 9 and now obviously 21? Like, has he seen a significant difference as well? And like, what's his perception on all this?
Oh, he is so awesome. He's hilarious. So he knows I'm doing this book. He's so funny. I actually interviewed him for the last part, and I said, so, what's your opinion of everything that you've gone through? Because he's an adult, and he has autism spectrum, and he's not cured, but he does awesome. Like most people can't tell. He's very independent. He's super intellectual and hilarious guy. So he's very living a good life. And so he said pretty much like that. He actually was really, really so wonderful. He said, are you kidding? If I didn't have everything you did for me, I worry about what have happened to me. And he said some funny things about that are in the book, which I'll save for that. But he said, everything that you did, I'm worried like what would have happened if I didn't have all that. And he said, I'm grateful to you for everything you did. And so he tells other people, like he advises other people, hey, that kid, he should have this, he should have that. They need to do this, they need to do that. He's hilarious. So he could have a show advising people what to do.
Yeah, and I've actually noticed that in our son, even though he's a lot younger, he will often, if he has some chocolate or whatever, he will tell us, he says, that was not good for me. It was yummy, but it was not good for me. My brain's going crazy. And I think a parent like yourself, I commend you for that, because I think more and more, like we're so overwhelmed with, all the information that's trying to enter our brain each and every day. That's, computers, social media and all that sort of stuff. But to actually know who you are as a person and what certain things, especially now we're talking about food, does for you, that self-awareness, I found in our son is absolutely second to none. Just having that self-awareness of, this is what this does to my body. And your son sounds like an amazing example of that. And now he's so confident that how much it's changed him, that he's able to advocate that to other people. And I think that's exactly how a movement or a big change happens in our world.
I appreciate that. And even the children that can't speak sometimes, they can give signals or indicate what they like or what they don't like. There's a therapy, very expensive therapy called IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulin. It's for kids that have like immune system problems. And, used to, it was $20,000 a pop for one treatment here in the United States. And if you couldn't get it covered by insurance, and some people pay that here, and some kids would get it every month. So one person told me about a child that, he, as the month wore on and he was getting the effect of that dose of IVIG was wearing off, he would silently hold up his arm like this, asking for the IVIG. He knew he didn't feel right. And so, they have ways of communicating behavior. And many people in the autism spectrum disorder community will say this: behavior is communication.
Yes.
So it's not like they're communicating either to themselves or other people. But even if it's not the traditional type of communication we're used to, they are sending a message or doing something that they're doing because of how they're feeling. And a lot of times that's tied with their state of health. And I do have that in the book too, how there's increasing evidence on how certain factors can lead to the establishment of an autism spectrum disorder in a child. And there's way more linkage now on the gut-brain connection, yes, not only in autism, but in other disorders, and that many, many so-called regular people have.
Absolutely. Oh my God, this is so valuable. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, look, yeah, okay. How many hours have you got?
You have to read the book.
Okay, so getting back to your book, is there another little section you would love to share with the listeners of this podcast and ourselves, of course, that you want to share with us now?
I would love to. I know that you reach a lot of people that love the camel. They love to hear about them, learn about them, right?
Yes.
So I have a couple, maybe some fun camel sections. Let's see if we try a little bit of that.
Okay,
great.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll read the first part and then I'll go to the second part of this one. So this is called chapter 14, and it's about the camel itself. Every camel culture is different, but they all share a truth. Camels have a prodigious memory. Their ability to love and hate is legendary. Their attachments like iron. They mourn deceased owners, respond to music, work harder when sung to by Bedouins. Their minds, say some cameleers, resemble those of human children. Some speculate that among mammals, they are second in intelligence only to dogs, although the human perception of animal intelligence is highly skewed by our perspective. Given their innate preference for doing things their way, camel smarts can make them tricky to handle. People ask me if I own camels. I don't have the will or the space to handle even one. To manage a camel, the person must speak its language and must trust its handler if it is to obey and give milk. Owners who don't live side by side with camels must hire a camel nanny of sorts to sweet talk, train, feed, restrain, and medicate and observe the animals. So that's one part.
Yeah. I love that. A camel nanny. Sounds like a new occupation.
That's the rich man's solution.
Yeah.
The camel nanny. I love it. Did you have something else you wanted to read?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read this part about their development a little bit because I thought that your people that follow you might like that a little bit. Yeah. Just one. So it's these creatures are alluring at any age. At birth, the stilt-legged babies look like they've been pulled from a flood, but they soon fluff up like a precious plush toy. Up to a year old, they're still leaning on mom, but developing the skills for independence. At 2 or 3 years old, they're playful preschoolers. They kiss humans' faces, press eyelash to eyelash, hang their heads over people's arms. They may shy at fluttering ribbons and other alarming menaces, still adjusting to the world. By age 4, they've achieved more self-confidence.
Wow.
That's
nice.
Right. I love it.
Goes on from there.
I can just see how much work has gone into that. And for those that are listening, that was an extract from Camel Crazy, which comes out October 29th. Which would be, you're a day behind. So if it's coming out October 29th in the States, that'd be October 28th for us here in Australia, I presume.
Is that how it works?
Wait, no, it'd be November 1st for us.
Anyway, whatever, it's coming out on
November 1st in Australia, October 29th.
Yeah.
Lots of countries seem to have their own site where you can order it. So, of course, in Amazon, we have Amazon.com in America, but Australia, you guys are having it on a site or two there. And also there's an outlet I learned about. It's called Book Depository.
Oh, yes.
So Book Depository, they offer free shipping of books all over the world, apparently.
They do.
So, yeah. But I'm excited about it because the camel, I think the camel has had basically, in most of the countries where we don't know about camels, it basically has zero public image. So I'm trying to give it at least a public face. People know that it exists. Because as we've seen in India, because you guys have been there and so have I, a camel that has no purpose is not going to exist much longer.
Yes.
So
That's right.
people need to be aware of them.
And
what
yeah,
they do. So I'm glad we both have a familiarity with that. So I do have quite a bit about India in this book and their situation. And I've got a lot of drama flowing in this book. So it's not just boring stuff about camels. It's a lot more about humanity and the people and the struggles and things like that for your audience.
Fantastic. No, this sounds like, look, you know, writing a book, as you know, it's a lot of hard work. Done it myself too. And it's just an enormous amount of work and effort and thought and consideration. What I'm getting from just talking today is your book, Camel Crazy. It's like a candlelight in the darkness, I think, is the best way I can describe it.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you.
I think this is big, Christine.
Yeah.
I think this is much needed. I mean, and we all know books is like, you can do a YouTube video, but you know, in 2 days that's lost amongst all the other YouTube videos that come up. But to write a book, you know, that's in print for years to come, I think is so important, and a reference people can refer back to as we, you know, as we go through this journey with camels. I mean, we know what camels are useful for. I mean, you've actually got scientific backup of what camels are useful for. And we've just got experience on what camels are used for, you know, the hands-on sort of stuff. And we see a massive future for camels, and I presume from you writing this book that you also see a big future for camels.
Yes, once people are aware of what they possess, they're just, I mean, if people really knew and they really had an idea, things would go crazy. Yes. I actually have something special in the book too that I wanted to get out there because it's one of the number one things people ask me about, and I really hope it's going to help get the word out there. I actually have a user's guide to camel milk in the back of the book and a resource list on where you can buy it.
Wow.
And so I address like not only autism, but the other conditions that it's useful for. And I tell you how much you should take for that. At least, you know, it's a guideline. And then also how to get it, how to use it, and then where to get it from. So that's in the back of the book. And I think that will hopefully help make it a practical resource. Rather, you know, it's a good story and information, but hopefully that resource will help the people that need it too.
Absolutely.
Oh, look, yeah, absolutely, no, terrific. I can see that that candlelight's actually going to be the spark that's going to set a bushfire on. It really will.
In a positive light.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, in a positive light, of course. But yeah, there's so many people that, you know, are in that darkness, especially with autism, and the incidences, as you've mentioned, you know, some figures there. It's horrific. You know, just so much confusion out there. But you know, you've done your research, you've got your anecdotal. You are definitely have written, you know, that candlelight in the darkness. I really think so. Well done. I mean, just congratulations.
Yes, it's a big feat.
Big congratulations to you.
That's so wonderful to hear. I really appreciate it. It's my honor also to lift up the voices of the pastoral people in this book.
Yes.
I've interviewed Somali people. They're in this book. Our wonderful friends from Niger, our friends from India, our Bedouin people. It's my honor to put their words out there and let people know how important they are to all of our health, and why this connection between the natural world and the modern world needs to stay rather than to be bulldozed out of existence like we're looking at.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh my gosh. We could talk. We'll have to do another podcast interview all about that once we've read the book. But
the deal.
So are you doing a book tour?
Yeah, I will be.
Where can people find out more about you and all these updates and book tour as these dates come to the surface?
Oh, thanks for asking. Okay, so I have a website. It's ChristinaAdamsAuthor.com. I try to keep things on there. But I'm also on Twitter. It's at ChristinaThink.com. Well, it's not .com, Twitter, at ChristinaThink. And then I'm on Instagram at Christina_Adams_author. So I put things on there. And then I also have my own public Facebook page, which is via Facebook, Christina Adams Author. So that's where I also post a lot of health news, a lot of emerging news on the camel world, on health, on all these related issues. And then I post some of that on Twitter too, but my Facebook page, Christina Adams Author, that's got a lot of breaking kind of health news and camel world news and things that people like us like to know about.
Yes, I'll definitely put all those links in the description. This has been such an awesome conversation. I am so incredibly inspired by your work. The title is just, I mean, it's going to make every camel person read the book because it's called Camel Crazy. Like, oh, that's me, you know. So I love everything about it, and I can't wait to pre-order our copies and read it. And then we'll have to catch up again on another interview and talk more about some of the things that are in the book, like what you mentioned before about the Bedouins and how they really are well, yeah, they're the people that started all this.
They're the rock, aren't they? Yeah, definitely.
They are. I mean, we owe a debt of gratitude to the cultures that are the real experts, and I'm just delighted that so many are in my book and then have endorsed the book also. So, and there'll be a lot of familiar names to you guys on when you read the book. You'll be like, oh, they're in there. Yeah, they are. Yeah. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I do hope we catch up again. And I look forward to hearing from all the readers and audience members if they want to get in touch.
That'd Fantastic. Be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
If you liked this information we've just shared with you, you'll be sure to love the free Camel ebooks and training videos that we're giving away. We're giving away 2 Camel ebooks, Introduction to Camels and Introduction to Camel Training. Plus, in our bonus camel training videos, we take you through training and handling camels built on connection and trust. And we also share how to understand a camel's way of thinking. This is gold information that you don't want to miss, so be sure to sign up now to get your free ebooks and training videos over at camelconnection.com.